Ahoy! Lately I'm seeing a lot of talk about the upcoming announced gear reset in whatever shape or form we'll get that. I've seen remarks about this on my channel, I've seen it on Discord, and I've seen it on Reddit, and generally the consensus about this seems to be that it was a massive mistake to announce the gear reset so early. Some people go as far as suggesting that the low player count right now is because of the announced gear score reset and that people just don't see a reason to play due to these changes. And I will definitely say that this is very likely true for quite a few people. But I also think we need to look at the bigger picture here. And for that, let's go back to the original statement about the gear reset first. One of the community questions in May was, will the new max gear score increase obsolete our current gear? Will our current 625 be upgradable into the new gear score max? The answer from Nosamos was yes and no. Yes, our current gear will be obsolete, and no, our current gear will not be upgradable to the new gear score max. And this is since a new system that adjusts gear score will be coming later this year. And then he said more detailed information will be revealed in the future, but so far we haven't heard anything since. Now we don't know what new systems in this context mean. It could just mean that we get 650 gear score, it could mean that gear score as a whole gets reworked or changed, or maybe gear score in itself won't be gear score anymore, or it could be that gear score will be tied to levels and we at higher levels. Like, there are so many potential options in how exactly this could go down that we don't know the specifics and we don't have clear information, which is very unfortunate because I think a lot of people primarily just want more information on this topic. We also don't know if Nosamos was actually meant to give out this information already. It may have been planned for a later date and it's happened to slip in there and they didn't notice. We don't know. Again, we can only speculate here. What we do know is that there is an upcoming community Q&A, and the most upvoted question on Reddit for that Q&A right now is about the system and if we can get some more details. I would understand if the devs don't want to give away too much just yet because they obviously want to make a big announcement for the expansion, how everything will work, but I think it would be nice if we get some small hints beforehand, some little pointers what direction we can expect, just so we have a little bit to speculate with. But that is difficult now because people have called them giving us information a massive mistake, and I think this is a problem. I am very happy that AGS is very transparent these days about their plans and what they want to do and how it's supposed to look, and yeah, the timing isn't always ideal, but I'd much rather have information than them holding all the upcoming information super close to their chest and not revealing anything unless it's basically ready, and us just sitting there and hoping that some feature that we want will maybe be implemented and not even knowing if they're even aware of the requests. But now, because of this feedback, they may be cautious with giving out more info just to not risk upsetting people in different ways. And here's the thing, I think Nua's player count would have gone down regardless. Like I said in my video when I talked about that recently, currently there isn't that much to do in the game, there isn't that much of a reason to play. People are probably going to come back a little bit with Season 2, but then that's still not the big thing because the big thing is going to be the expansion, it's very obvious. Somebody taking a break after this comment because they learned that their gear would be useless at some point may as well have taken a break 2 weeks later when they ran out of content. So I think the numbers wouldn't be trending up right now if this announcement wasn't being made. There's definitely some less motivation for some people to come back for Season 2 because they say all the new gear that's coming out is not going to be relevant for long enough, so I'm not even going to bother. Now, we don't know exactly what will happen with named gear, for example, so we don't know for sure if everything will be completely unviable. We'll have to see about that, and I wouldn't be surprised if they take a different pathway for named items, because that's a bit of a different situation in general. But either way, people that are purely focused on gear may not come back, and that is normal in any MMO. You have a group of people in any MMO that are basically just constant loot goblins. They just want to have best in slot gear. It doesn't even matter what the content is as long as they get really good loot from it, and that's pretty much all they care about. That is one demographic that plays MMOs. I'm not part of that, but I'm also not super far away from that either. I understand the drive to want to have good gear and work towards good gear. So really it's just a personality thing for them. You have other players that purely enjoy playing the game with their friends. You have players that enjoy the experience of the game itself, just enjoy playing solo, whatever. There are different motivations to play games and especially MMOs, but one of them is people who want to grind good gear. That demographic has no reason to return with Season 2 unless they want to have good gear that only lasts for 3 months. Those people probably exist as well. But then there are other demographics, like the people that like playing with their friends, or people that want the challenging content, that would be me for example. I want to have difficult content, that would be interested in Season 2 anyways, because the loot isn't the primary motivator for them, that's just a nice side effect. Just to give you some insight into my personal preferred content, my ideal content would be something very difficult, very challenging, that requires a lot of coordination, but with also very, very good rewards in return. So you really get rewarded for doing something that not everyone in the game can do. In case of this season's rewards, this will primarily end up being transmog stuff if the loot is not worth it for the next patches, for the next season, because then you'll still be able to use the transmog designs from these raids, which you can't get anywhere else. So for people with a mindset similar to mine, it's very easy to return for Season 2 while knowing that your gear will get reset anyways. But here's the thing that I'm wondering about with people who say they would have rather learned about this later. Because would you really? If you were playing Season 2 and you grind all the gear and you get all that gear and you're so happy that it's so good, and then you learn that there's going to be a gear reset and that gear is potentially going to be useless, wouldn't you be way more frustrated than you are now? Now you have a little bit of a heads up, you have a few months of warning where you can decide, am I going to play this content even though the gear may or may not be useful afterwards, because it is named gear after all, so it might be different. But either way, I know that there's a risk if I play this content that the rewards are not going to be useful for long. And I'm not going to be suddenly slapped in the face, say a month before the expansion releases, for example, and be like, hey, that stuff you just farmed, yeah, that's useless now, good luck. Put this in a metaphor, if my landlord was planning to kick me out, I'd rather know 4 months in advance than be hit with it 1 month before it happens. At least this way I have time to prepare. Also, I think it's good to have the negative aspect of the expansion out of the way early. Now, not everyone is looking at a gear reset as something negative. I think that it's actually nice to have some more even grounds between newer players and older players when it comes to an expansion, but I also know that a lot of people don't like it. If you see this as negative news, then I feel like if you learned about this right before the expansion, it would sour the expansion itself for you. You would know that there's cool new upcoming stuff, but you would probably be thinking more about the gear sets that you have that you're going to lose, so it would feel bad in that regard. By giving us this warning multiple months early, we know what's coming, you're mentally prepared that that is going to happen inevitably, and then when we actually get closer to the expansion, you will primarily get positive news. You already know that most of your gear will be gone, so if at that point they announce that maybe some of the gear will remain useful somehow, that would be positive news and that would be something good, so you associate that with the expansion as a good thing. Likewise, if you learn about new ways to craft better gear easier, which I'm very certain will come by the way, then that's positive news as well. And then maybe there will be new or changed perks that will be a lot more useful, and those were perks that you possibly didn't have on your weapon or armor or jewelry before anyways because you didn't really consider them worth it. This could have been a potential annoyance with your old gear set, devaluing some pieces that you already had, but if everything is starting from scratch, then it doesn't really matter. You can just make a new piece with this perk right away or can farm for this perk right away. It is not something that's going to be on your mind in the sense of they're constantly changing these perks, so I need to adjust my already good gear, like for example what happened with Elemental Aversion and Shuriken Fortification. In conclusion, I don't think that making this announcement this early was a massive mistake. I do think they could have been a bit more transparent about how it works, and I think that would help a little bit. But I think overall, giving us plenty of heads up, plenty of warning, so we can prepare is a good thing, and I welcome the transparency. I agree that it wasn't handled optimally, with this announcement being a little bit hidden, the phrasing being a little bit weird. I think that could have been done better for sure, and maybe make it a bit more official and as a big statement on a Q&A that is not in written form. But either way, I'm glad that it was mentioned to some degree, so we kinda know what's coming. Even if this may temporarily lower the player numbers a little bit, I believe that most of those players will come back to the game, especially if they've taken a fair bit of a break in between, which is not a bad thing when it comes to gaming in general. If you stop playing or minimize the amount of time that you spend playing for 3 or 4 months, and then come back to the game when it's getting changed, it's probably a very refreshing experience in many ways, and at that point you may not be as worried about your gear anymore because some time has passed. The really important thing in my opinion is that best in slot gear needs to be more achievable in the future, in whatever ways that is, but it just was too annoying to get anywhere close to it, and there was so much RNG, too much gold involved in it. But they have been saying on their recent dev talks what direction they're planning to go in, so I am fairly hopeful for that. I had to delay the trading tips video by a day, so that will be coming tomorrow. Consider subscribing and clicking the bell if you want to get notified. Also, if you want to have those trading tips early before everyone gets them tomorrow, then consider supporting me on Patreon. I quickly wanted to mention, I talked about streaming the sandworm raid today. That is not going to happen. The sandworm was apparently only changed exactly in the ways that were described. There are no value tweaks or anything, so most people were not motivated to go for another run. So probably not going to happen until there are more significant changes. Thanks to my patrons for supporting this video, and thank you for watching. SLOTH, out.